Welcome to the English with Kirsty podcast from www.englishwithkirsty.com. Here I'll be sharing with you tips, information and other learning resources so that you can improve your business English.
So today we're having a bit of a different episode. This is probably the first time we're doing this, and this is Kirsty's idea. So really, and I think I'm going to adopt it from now on and have some episodes like this. So it's not the usual. Tell me about your background and did you study translation, languages? What did you do? Blah blah blah. But it's more of a conversation between friends about our perspective on a subject, and this time we have Kirsty and Kirsty Wolf. I love her name. She is actually an English teacher, coach, anything you want. I have something beeping all over the place for some reason that I don't understand. Oh, I know what to do. Wait a second. All right, here we go. So now it should be okay. So that's it. So Kirsty and I are going to talk about foreign languages and the importance and the impact that they have in your life. So this is the subject that I discuss and talk about multiple times with anybody I can, because it's just a great passion for me, due to the fact that English had, I would say, the greatest impact of all the things I've ever tried to learn in my life, because all the jobs that I've had, all the things that I do have to do with speaking English. So I thought it was going to be a great subject. Kirsty and I thought it was going to be a great subject for us to just talk about a little bit and to give you our perspective. And I'm sure you're going to find interesting points and things that you can actually see for yourself in your experience when learning a foreign language. So let's just see who this woman is. So just talk a little bit about yourself. This part is just, I have to keep it right so that everybody gets to know you better. Tell me a little bit about yourself.
Something about Kirsty Wolf. Okay, I am Kirsty Wolf. I work with people who want to improve their English. So whether that's people who are right at the beginning of this journey, I don't have very many of those, but there are some, to people who want to come on language courses, mainly for their jobs. I have some company language courses, and a lot of people who just want to have the confidence to use English more naturally and to sound like themselves, because I think that's one of the things that I learned as a language learner. I speak German, and a couple of years ago I started learning Romanian, so my German is better than my Romanian, but I speak both. And that's really hard at the beginning, to be yourself, to be the person who you are, to say things in the way that you would say them, to react in the way that you would react. And in another language, sometimes it can go both ways. Sometimes people just, English speakers just fill in the gaps with English, and I don't do that because I think like I've failed if I've done that. I have to do it properly in the other language. But the other way is to do what I do and just kind of shut down a bit. And if I have an idea and I don't know how to say it, then I won't say it, or I'll just observe. And observing is fine at the beginning, but if you really want to develop good relationships with people, whether that's as a friend or in a business context, you can't just sit there and say nothing because people think you have nothing to say. And I have a lot to say, and that's really frustrating. The more you talk, the more difficult it is when you're learning another language to be yourself in that other language, because you talk a lot and then you have to learn how to say all those things in the other language. And it's frustrating. And I know that it can improve. I've worked on 2 languages, and I've got them to the point where I think in those languages and interact in those languages, not entirely as I would in English, but it's getting there. And I know that I can help people on that journey. So that's what I do. Yeah, I'm an English teacher, but I don't just sit and teach English. It's about being yourself in English, because it's so important if you want people to know who you are. And if you're a business owner and you want to talk about your products or services, you can't get people to know, like, and trust you if you're the face of your business and they don't know anything about you, because you play it safe. You don't say the things that you would normally say because you're not sure how to do it. So I help people on that journey.
Yeah. So I can see myself in that, because of course I usually talk a lot. So for me, it would totally be impossible it would be very frustrating, very hard to just imagine myself in that position where I would be able to just express myself in the other language. Of course, that the only languages that I speak are languages that have been in my life for a long time, and that gives me a bit of an advantage. But at the same time, I didn't have that advantage at birth, right? I looked for it because, everybody knows I'm a Madonna fan. Madonna always behind me or somewhere visible. But the thing is that I felt that need of actually investing in my English at a really young age, where I obviously didn't have a job in mind, right? And I think that's what really helped, in my case, to develop this very specific and very emotional connection that I have with English, because it's like I always say, the thing that transformed and shaped my life the most, because everything that I do, I try to do in English. If I read a book, I'll read in English. If I sing a song, I'll sing in English. This is basically what I do, is to dedicate myself, not because I have a goal necessarily in mind. Well, now is a bit more, educated. I'm more educated in my choices. And I try to, for example, watch things that will give me an advantage. And by that, I mean reality shows, for example.
They're educational.
Well, they are. I get sometimes a bit criticized for that. But the truth is that I'm very open about the crap TV that I watch, because it's where I feel that I could learn the most. So this is what I do. Sometimes I'm not even interested on that, Love Island, that they have, people falling in love with each other or whatever it is, because they're all stuck in a house, and that's the only option that they have, is to fall in love with each other, things like that. But sometimes, because I love the whole palette of flavors of Spanish, for example. So how else am I going to have, any kind of contact with Colombian Spanish or with Mexican Spanish or whatever it is, right? So I just look at TV as my means of keeping things a little bit more fresh. But in the beginning, you're absolutely right. I mean, what's going to happen for you that can break the ice, right? What's going to happen? And I think that the real trick is for you to understand how it works, and how it works for you to learn something, and in particular a language, and then to develop on that. I am a person who is very much in love with grammar.
Me too, because it helps me to avoid the mistakes that I'm really trying so hard not to make. And if I understand how it works, then...
I mean, how was your experience? Let's talk about something that is not English, because it's a whole other beast, right? How was it, especially as an English speaker? So you English speakers don't have the need that, at least I've always felt, that my English had to be there on point, because I needed it for this, for that, blah, blah, blah. So how is it for you, speaking the dominant language of the world, right, to be interested in other languages? How is the process? Because it's very different, right? I'm sure, than for someone who's not from an English-speaking country. What happened with German, for example?
I get bored with English all the time. That's just... Yeah, everybody, it's a global language, but it was boring. And I think at school, because I started with French, and I did well in French, but I've forgotten it all now. It's kind of useful looking at the grammar for some of the languages that I'm looking at now. But yeah, I kind of abandoned it. But with German, I think the beginning for me was that it was something that I was good at school. I mean, I enjoyed school apart from maths, but I liked school, but there were things that I was better at. And I think we sometimes try hard, or I do. I really focus on the things that I'm enjoying and I may be good at, and neglect the things that I really should invest time in if I want to have all the results the same. But I enjoy it's a really bad way to do it. But it's, if I feel passionate about something and interested in something, then I do that thing. And with German, I think it helped that I quite early on found some German-speaking friends. And so for me, language is always connected with people and interactions and communicating. So whilst I did read a lot of books and consume a lot of information to build my vocabulary, and because I was genuinely interested, I also had the opportunity to interact with people. And some people came to visit us. One of my friends who didn't really speak English, and she didn't really speak German. So even with my limited school German, I was in a better position to help those people to communicate, but also to be involved, because people said, "Oh, do you want to be an interpreter?" And I was, "No, I talk too much. I want to be part of the conversation. I can't do that." So that's why I didn't become an interpreter or a translator, because whilst they're interesting things to do, you don't get to speak and write, and I needed that. But I did enjoy this experience of being able to do something useful and using language to help people. And I found it interesting, like, oh, how do I communicate what that person just said in English or in German? in a way that makes sense, or do I need to explain something that wouldn't make sense to somebody who doesn't speak that language? And I found it fascinating, so that's why I continued with German. But then I think as an adult there are different things to think about, because at school it's very structured. You go to your classes, you learn, you pass the exams, you go on to something else. I had a couple of false starts with other languages. For example, my Turkish, I got quite I understand, well, I don't know if I still do understand, but at the time.
Wow, I didn't know about this one. I was going to ask about something else, but I didn't know about this one.
Well, the surprises. I
know. That's what I say about you. You don't believe me.
You did. It's on the internet. It's true now. With Turkish, I never spoke. I refused to speak. I had to speak with my teacher, but I always distracted her with questions about grammar so that she had to explain stuff. And then there was no time for spontaneous speaking. How sad. I didn't have to do it.
So you manipulated that.
Yeah, I was a nightmare. Teachers are the worst to teach because we know all the tricks. But when I started with Romanian, I decided I didn't want to be like that, because it's not good to be able to.
I have to ask, why Romanian? Because it's like, why all of a sudden I understand the German, of course, same family of languages, blah, blah, blah. It would be useful. Everybody knows it's one of the things that I'd love the most. If I could just magically start speaking a language, I would have no doubts. It would be, as everybody knows, German and then Arabic. Those are my fantasy languages. What can I do? The sound of it is just insane to me. So I like the music. I actually listen to Rammstein, right, in German, and I really enjoy it. So I'm one of those people. But the truth is that because of the way how I see languages, it's really hard for me to do that, because I see it as a full-blown investment or your, all the guns that you have should be out for that. And I don't see how I would manage at this point. So I'll just leave it there. But now, talking about you, what was the story with this Romanian? Because, I mean, it's not necessarily something that you think of immediately when we talk about languages. And also that's why I want to invite people on the podcast that speak other languages, because I realize how much I've been focused on British people. Oh my God, yes, you're British, but it's just from a different perspective, because let's see what you have to say about learning a language that is so different from your family of languages that you speak originally. What happened there, and what was the motivation? That is insane to me.
Well, it's not entirely different, because I mean, French grammar, there are some things that made sense to me because I had French at school, even though I'd forgotten it, but that wasn't part of the decision. It was really, I wanted to learn another language. I thought it would be helpful for me as somebody who teaches languages to go back into that position where you think, oh, I don't want to speak to anyone. But I hadn't decided which one. So I was looking at different languages and I hadn't decided, but I went to a business networking meeting in English. And the two people there that made me feel welcome and were friendly to me were Romanian speakers. I thought, okay, well, I know nothing about Romanian. That could be interesting. And it went from there. I just needed that inspiration. And then I started. I didn't want to make the same mistakes as I'd made with Turkish. So I knew that I would have to speak. And I don't speak a lot at the beginning. There are different ideas on this, but I think it's okay to do what I do as long as I know that at some point I'm going to have to speak, because if I feel that I don't have anything interesting or intelligent to say, then I don't really want to speak just to practice the, 3 sentences that I've just learned with somebody who, that's great. Like, you can't really have a conversation with that. So I did really work at finding opportunities to learn and to speak, because if you're learning a language that isn't the main language in your country, then you have to be more proactive. So I found friends, I found people that I actually wanted to speak with, and sometimes I did speak English, and one of my friends, she spoke Romanian, and we sent each other voice messages. She just told me about her day, her dog, her job, what she cooked, what she did, just really basic stuff. But in doing that, every message was an opportunity for me to learn something about how native speakers use their language, because I think that was really important for me. I don't want just try and create some crazy sentences that maybe people understand but are not correct. I really want to observe how other people use their language, and from that develop a feeling and intuition for what sounds right. And once I know that, then I can start thinking in the language and have an idea of what's going to sound okay.
But what was the first step? That's what I don't understand.
The first step was finding a course, and then but the course didn't really work out for a number of reasons, but one of which was because the trainer had to disappear for several months. And
so was it just a one-on-one thing, or was it a group thing?
It was a one-on-one online thing. I think you can, that's my clock, it does that every hour.
That's okay.
One-on-one thing, because I think I wanted to learn quickly, and I don't enjoy, I mean, I think one-on-one is really good anyway, but I don't enjoy the first part of learning a new language. Because I mean, it's fascinating to see how it works and to begin to understand, but I don't enjoy that feeling of incompetence. So I wanted to get through that, first bit, so that I could start having conversations.
So you started by having private lessons so that you would feel more comfortable in developing while it was still at an early stage.
Yeah, and then the teacher disappeared, so I had to find another one, and then that was an interesting process, because I started speaking with a number of different people, and language exchanges, they can also be good. It's hard at the beginning because it is a bit boring. Well, as a language teacher, I don't think it is. As somebody doing it in their free time, it can be boring speaking to a complete beginner. So you need someone either with patience or with a problem that you can solve so that it's a fair exchange. But now I think ultimately the best way is to have friends who only use that language with you. Like I've got a friend who, she speaks English, but she never speaks English with me. We always speak Romanian because that's our language for communication.
Yeah.
So find people to communicate with.
So what about music and movies and the usual thing that we do for English? Did you use any of those strategies that I'm sure that your students would use in their journey?
Music, sometimes, movies not so much, because
Romanian production.
I don't know, they're hard to find, but also podcasts were more helpful. So I found podcasts. I found some stuff on YouTube, which is about as intellectually stimulating as your reality TV, but it was good for the same reasons.
You see, I'm right. It works for me. It works for you.
It was just people that, creators on YouTube just talking about everyday stuff, and I watched quite a lot of that around Christmas time.
Did you watch like not movies, but videos on YouTube about verbs and developing your vocabulary, or you just went into you didn't?
No, because it's really hard. Maybe for English there is a lot more content, but some of it's kind of questionable and not very good. With Romanian, there just wasn't a lot. There were a couple of people who were creating some good content, but I guess because of the number of learners, there isn't so much. With things like series or movies, I have to. I'm unable to see what's going on, so I need to really focus.
Don't worry, take your time. Take your time.
And
have some water.
Don't worry. If I don't understand the dialogue, then I can't understand what's going on. So that doesn't feel like a good time investment for me if there's a lot of action. Whereas if there is a lot of dialogue and I'm able to understand that, then that's a better investment. So because I can't read subtitles, that doesn't help me. So I need to get past that early stage where I don't understand what's going on if I want to enjoy any content. So that's like also a good motivator for me to learn and to improve, because I can't rely on that. So
that's right. But did you go through like lists of words, lists of verb conjugations, things like that are more classic in a way that we learn?
I didn't do any of that. I like reading. I mean, I need to make notes, because if I don't, I will forget things. If I want to learn, I need to type it. So when I went to lessons, I made my own vocabulary list, things that I didn't want to forget, things that were important for me. And that's important as well, because if you just take a list of words, they're not important to you, they're not relevant. But if you have a list, I do that with my clients, a list of words that they needed and didn't have, things that they wanted to say but couldn't, then that's going to be more relevant and a more useful time investment, because you're probably going to need them again. You needed them today, so it's things that you wanted to talk about. So I think it's good to focus on things that are interesting for you. I did quite a lot of business vocabulary because I started quite early. I went to networking meetings in Romanian and felt like it's so hard the first time when I know that I'm relatively articulate in English, and then trying to explain what my social media strategy was going to be for the next year or so in Romanian. I was like, oh, wow. Don't ask me, because we had breakout rooms. That was easier, but at the same time, it was very difficult to be there. Most people said, do you want to do this in English? And I said, no, I'm here to speak Romanian, but you're going to have to know that I would have said a lot more in English because
you have to be stronger than most of us when you're an English speaker, because I mean, English speakers talk about this phenomena everywhere, that when they travel, when they go somewhere, everybody is like, don't even give them the chance to practice the local language or whatever it is, because everybody just wants to practice their English, and it's just so much easier to just jump into English and solve everything with it. So one really has to be understanding that
you can really ruin someone's day like that, because for you it's just thinking that you're doing something, you know, time efficient and helpful, but for them it's like, I wanted to try, and you obviously think that I'm not good enough to try, so
exactly,
why bother? But
so how would
also
you...
a lot of English people don't speak other languages. I mean, come on, the reason why a lot of people do that is because they know that the other person isn't going to be able to speak. English people don't have a great reputation for language learning, do we?
Yeah, but I find that a little bit annoying at the moment, because I have been talking to a lot of people. Obviously, I only talk to people who work in the language industry, that's true. But still, their backgrounds in that respect are a little bit more interesting than I expect. Just because they really dedicate themselves, and they don't have this motivation that we have, that to understand the universal language. So they probably have to go to greater lengths to actually learn and find materials and all that you're describing for your Romanian experience. So I'm just wondering, how do you rate your Romanian at the moment? Because I know you're very strict and you're very hard on yourself. So what is your evaluation of your Romanian performance?
I'd say after about a year and a half, B2, C1, my
Oh, I wasn't expecting official.
Great. I'm an English teacher. Okay, so I can watch things and understand them without really thinking about it. When I speak, I have to think a bit more. I can talk to a friend for a couple of hours in Romanian and not feel like as stressed as I used to.
So the coffee shop talks that I keep talking about. So
yeah, we have normal conversations about everything in Romanian, and they're unplanned. Like, and I do stick to Romanian. I don't want to. I mean, if I don't know a word, I'm not too proud to ask. But I won't try and explain something in English if I don't know how to do it. I'll use what I have and find different words. But you can do that after a while. I think at the beginning, I didn't have a fear of speaking. I had a frustration with having nothing to say. And I think you have to get through that. Once you do, then you can enjoy the language a bit more. And I think that's maybe the reason why a lot of people give up, because the first part is the hardest, but then you can really start to have fun and build meaningful friendships and use that language as a way to communicate with other people. And I've forgotten the question. What did you ask? Oh, how do I rate my Romanian? I understand more than I can, a higher level of language content than I can produce myself, but I think that's normal, isn't it, to do that?
I guess
but I'm kind of satisfied that I've got there. I still have a lot to learn and a lot that I want to do, but I think I'm at the point now where I can meet new people and talk to them and not feel so self-conscious.
Do you feel like you can be yourself fully? Because I have I feel like I have different personalities, slightly different personalities with each language, because I'm a bit more formal in Portuguese. I would say formal, maybe that's not the word, but maybe I'm slower, I think, in thinking in Portuguese, just because it's like my practical life is much more in English than it is in Portuguese. So I guess especially now, strangely enough, now that I'm not even at the office, I'm not supposed to have meetings as such. But the truth is that I think I have been speaking English a lot more than before, which is really even more than before, which is really a blessing, because in all my jobs, I had to speak English on site all the time. So do you feel like you already have your personality, your fully realized Kirsty personality when you speak Romanian, or do you think that will take a little bit more steps?
I'm still getting to know her, because Kirsty in English or German is more direct, more kind of outspoken, is quicker. But with the Romanian, I guess it's because of the cultural aspects as well. Like, a lot of the Romanian speakers that I know are a lot more open than
They are
English people. Yeah.
Okay. Oh.
Yeah, like, I don't know. I had a Romanian client who came here to England, and she said that it was actually really difficult to get to know English people sometimes.
Okay, I wasn't expecting that necessarily.
No, we're just being open to share about how you feel about things, being more demonstrative, being more, and I think it's fun to explore that part of Kirsty when she speaks Romanian. It's kind of fun. It's nice, but I think that's also to do with the connections that you make when you use the language as well as the language itself.
But culturally, is it a country that interests you at all, or not even?
Yeah, no, I think it does, because I've made friends there now. I worked so hard, and I started. We had lockdown here in the UK, and you couldn't leave your house, and I wanted to do something useful with that time, so that was another reason. I was feeling a bit not so much isolated, because I have a good network of people with whom I communicate online, and they're not local anyway. So
like me, but I'm new to your life. I'm not a lockdown product.
You're not. But we still managed to speak most days.
I don't even understand how it happened for the first time, but hey, something about Jane, I'm sure. Jane Eggers.
These things happen and you don't always understand them.
Yes, that's what I like. I like things I don't understand, sort of. So I've heard, however, and it just came out in a conversation or a post or something that you posted recently, that you are also learning Portuguese. And I was like, what?
Yeah, that's new. And
what's happening in there?
What's happening is that I started a course, and I'm not going to talk to you at least till after Christmas, and then
I mean, you can trust me, can you not?
No, when you're recording a podcast, I can't.
No, not at the moment. You don't have to do it in public like that, but I mean in private, because you.
No, I don't think I would. So. Because we talk about so many other things, and I don't want to. I think that's my problem as a language learner, and something that I tell my clients not to do. But very few of my clients are starting with English right at the beginning. And as I said, I don't enjoy this beginning stage, but that's why I want to get past it,
Yes, I know, but it's interesting to me because, as you know, I consider myself, you consider yourself an English teacher and trainer, and the word I use for myself is what I told you before, it's mentor. So I'm a mentor for English and for Portuguese. So I'm more than interested in knowing what your, let's say, needs are, your interests and all that, because I'm actually thinking, like I told you before, about doing a series of videos, right? And I want to do stuff for beginners for Portuguese, and then I want to do things for advanced learners, which is a lot more natural to me, right? Because the idea is just to act natural and then reflect on the content and just learn from it. But I will somehow have a basic structure. That's the idea. Go to a restaurant or having a conversation, something like that, and then just go from there. But the question is what to do for beginners, right? Is it something that I should do in English and then add just the relevant Portuguese words, but the whole explanation is in English? Should it be directly in Portuguese? So I'm considering all of these things. And if you are a Portuguese learner, this is exactly what I need in my life to have that kind of feedback. And also, if you want to practice at some point, whenever you trust me for that, then I
trust you, I don't trust myself.
You don't have to trust your Portuguese, right? Because that's the idea if you're learning. And it's amazing to watch that process for someone like me who thinks about languages 24/7. That's all I think about. That's all I talk about. So, I mean, seeing the process, I'm watching the process because my child is now super young and is still learning how to speak. So I'm looking at that with, very interested eyes. But of course, as an adult, you have other challenges. And I do want to hear your experience and what you go through, especially in a language that I can speak, right? And that I can teach. Then it's very different, because we could talk about your Romanian experience and all that, but because I don't know Romanian, then I wouldn't have specific problems that I could focus on or ask you about. But for Portuguese is very different. But I do understand that it's not the day that we're going to talk about that.
But speaking about Romania, I think that will help me, because now, I mean, I've listened to some of your content. I read things on LinkedIn, and I don't have them translated. I try to figure it out, but there are things that make sense to me.
So you have heard the podcast in Portuguese?
Yes.
So the episode. Oh.
But I think I don't understand yet, but there are parts of sentences that I do understand because I speak Romanian, not because of any of my other
you have
languages.
the roots, right? The common roots.
Yeah, the grammar makes, like, some parts of grammar make sense because we do that in Romanian, so that's okay. But so I hope that will help me to make faster progress because I already have this foundation, and some words are similar, and even if they're a bit different, I know what it means because I know a similar word in Romanian, so that helps. Or maybe it doesn't, because there might be some
it might confuse you. Well, it depends on what kind of person you are. Some people have trouble if they learn Spanish and Italian, or Italian and Portuguese, or Spanish and Portuguese, and that might be difficult. But I mean, it depends on who you are. Obviously, it always depends on who you are, in my opinion, because of, like, saying things about, we learn in a certain way, and like my son is not actually following the specific sounds and patterns that you're supposed to learn in a specific order, like the vast majority of children. So for me, it was like a big eye-opening that I have to think about it from yet another perspective, because I try to put myself in from, look at it from many points of view, because it's something, even philosophically, even from a religious point of view, right? I look for those stories that have anything to do with languages and with language as such, because that's something that interests me from every point of view. So what kind of people actually approach you for the English classes? What is their philosophy, their idea on languages? What are their fears? What are they thinking? Is it because they need it? Is it because they want it? Is it a mix of things? Because that's my experience. I guess the people that come to me for English mentoring, it's something that they need, but they can get away with what they already have. But what they want is to take it a bit further and to really feel confident, because they can manage, like I was telling you before, they can manage at a meeting. But I do believe that work meetings are evolving in such a way that you need a further comprehension of the language in a more practical sense, in a more basic sense. Even just the coffee shop talks are more complicated than meetings at work, right? For someone who's learning a foreign language. So I really go with that. So what do you like? What do you want? How do you feel? And then just try to involve English in those activities and make it part of your daily life. Because this is what I do for myself, right? No matter what I do, there's always that moment in the day where I'm going to be studying English. It just might not look like it, right? That's what I like about my method. It's like it's something that you cannot see, you cannot tell, because it's not explicit like that. It's not obvious like that. But in the end, I am doing it because I don't watch a show just for watching a show. I just cannot do it. I'm thinking about what they're saying constantly. So that's why I cannot sometimes watch things that are, full of content, because I wouldn't pay attention to the content itself, but to the language. This is why I say that reality shows are something that I watch frequently, and that they are probably responsible for my growing interest in learning English, because that's what happens to me. It's like I started when I was about 10. I became a Madonna fan when I was 10. I felt that need at that time, but then I had no idea what I was doing or when it would end. And then, of course, throughout time and studying linguistics and all that stuff, I realized, oh, this is something I'm going to do forever and never get there, because where's there? Right?
You never stop learning.
You never stop. It's just unbelievable, because, of course, also language evolves, and everybody knows I focus on the American English part of things, and I don't focus on the British English evolution so much. And I actually could not speak British English, I don't think, because my focus has always been with American English, and that's really the thing that I live for. I can say that. So reality shows have been kept me on my tippy toes, I would say. Just they keep it fresh, they keep it current, and I really need that. So this is like a lifetime commitment. I don't know if I'm going to commit to something else like this ever in my life, but English is something I cannot help it, right? I don't do it for a specific purpose anymore. I just do it because I want to, and it gives me so much joy and happiness. And the fact that I have this tool that helps me develop so many things in life even for other types of content that have nothing to do with languages, the fact that most of the content that I'm interested in exists in English, usually by American people, then it's such a blessing for me. So I see it from all of these perspectives, and I don't see English as a thing for work at this point. And this is how I think that people should, if possible for them, if they find it in themselves, if they look at it like this, that it has multiple purposes as any language, because my Spanish is something that I also absolutely love. My Spanish is just a big mixture of whatever I learned at college, and then whenever I was in Los Angeles and spoke to a lot of Mexican people, and then lived in Spain, but never actually spoke to people in Spanish. I would only speak in Spanish with probably Argentinian and Mexican people anyway. So it's like my Spanish is a totally different animal, because I don't focus on Spanish from Spain or Spanish from here or from there, just wherever it comes from, and I'm just open to it. But obviously my Spanish doesn't have any responsibility in my life. I don't teach Spanish. I don't work in Spanish usually. I do it if I have to for terminology projects or things like that. But it's my knowledge. It's true that it's there, but I don't consider it a language that I use for my usual day-to-day tasks, right? But English is here for all of that. So I have to be at the multiple levels that I need to be. I need to be at a business meeting. I need to express myself. I need to talk about my spiritual life, because that's an interest of mine. And I need to be able to also deconstruct a lot of the things that I already know, bring it back to basics, so that when I have people in the mentoring sessions, I can actually put myself on their shoes, right?
That's where I wanted to get back to. So I'm glad that you came back to that, because I was going to.
I would eventually, right? I rinse around a little bit, but I would eventually.
You mentioned it, but I don't know that you've really talked about that. So people won't necessarily know what you do. So tell us about that. What happens with the mentoring?
Wasn't that going to be my solo episode about that?
This is the introduction to the solo episode, and then you can build on it.
I don't know. You've all seen me on LinkedIn, if you follow us on LinkedIn, that I've been back and forth with Kirsty, because we have been talking a lot offline too, and we've been, we just recently had a networking event, and it was unbelievable. I was really happy with it, and I got a bunch of ideas from it. So I guess all of this, yes, all of this is probably going to change the shape of the podcast, because it's always open to being different, as long as the basics are kept. And the only basics that we have is the fact that we need to talk about languages. But then again, what would I talk about, right? That's the only thing I can talk about. That's the only thing that I do. So I do a bunch of things, like I told you before. That's why I consider myself the language worker. This is the reason why I chose the name for the podcast, just like that, because that's what I consider. I do all sorts of projects that have to do with applying languages, of course, translation, localization, post editing for machine translation. I do cultural consultancy. I do English mentoring, Portuguese mentoring, all sorts of things. So like I say, I'm not a translator. I don't consider myself any of those, a proper job that you have. I'm a translator, I'm a proofreader. So I do all of those things if the project asks for that. So I'm always open to doing multiple tasks at a project. So that's what I enjoy too, like the whole variety of managing, of vendor managing, to managing projects, being a vendor manager. So all the things that I've done are things that I wouldn't mind just keep on doing forever, because I just simply love them. So I guess that's my advantage. And that's it. Now going solo for me is my opportunity to fully realize all of those activities. And probably, I guess it's not a secret that my intention is to have some sort of a company going very soon, where I can just gather all of these things that I do. And I know that a lot of people do very well, and have them on board with me in a fully realized project, so that I just, I live for this. I do this all the time and don't do anything else, because that's it. Don't consider, other options in life and all of that. I'm very open, very flexible, as long as I am in this corner. I guess that's how it goes for me. So that's it. But I really don't have things super set in stone yet. So I'll have to play it by ear at the moment. So that's it.
It's an adventure.
I don't have good answers for you at the moment.
You do.
It's all work in progress. I'm doing a lot of things, experimenting. Everybody knows that this whole podcast thing is my favorite thing to do at the moment. It's just one thing I was postponing for years and years and years. And like I say, I'm open to, gearing it towards other things, like having people's spontaneous opinions about events. That's one thing I'm thinking about. All sorts of possible content that is not fabricated, right? It's just people's opinions and people just giving you what they have received and giving it to you from their own eyes and from their own perspective. So it's going to be more and more towards that.
And I think that's really exciting because that's something that, some podcasts can be very, it feels like people are working from a script, and it's, and content that sometimes you can find online. It's not real, it's not human, it doesn't have that
I can do that because
do.
I cannot do it like that because it's just obvious. I just need to do it this way. And this time I didn't even have one single question for Kirsty. So that I
never do that either when I interview
4 or 5
people.
questions for people. So this is like a new format for the episodes. It's like we're just talking as friends and just putting it out there. This is our opinion or the way we have lived our language experience so far.
Yeah, and I think there's something refreshing about that as well, because that's what we learn, other people learn, and I think I relate to what you were saying about how language is part of your life, because I think from the beginning when I started learning German, I was always reading something or talking to friends, or it became part of my life. I think when people say they don't have time, we're all busy, we all have a lot of stuff to do, but if you can build learning another language or improving or just having that language as part of your life experience, then you don't see it as, I have to find time to answer this person in Romanian because I'm going to answer her anyway. So it's not like, I need to find time for Romanian studies today, or if you have to do something specific for a course, then you do need to make time to do that, because if you don't, the only person who will be negatively impacted by that is yourself.
Yes.
But if it can become part of your life, and then finding space for, if you've got multiple languages going on, finding space for them all, because sometimes I was talking to, even though my German is better than my Romanian, I was talking to a German friend, and the words were coming in Romanian. So I was like, because I've been speaking more Romanian recently. And then so giving space for all of them to make sure that you allow them all to develop, and it's fun. But
yes, I'm not like you in that respect. You already know, right? I don't have the intention of adding. Yes, I have the German fantasy, but I just don't see how it's going to go. So because I don't see how it's going to go, I just don't do it.
I think you could do it. It's never too late. Yeah, it's frustrating. It's annoying at the beginning, like I've already said. But once you get past that,
I'm very emotional. It's not like, I have something that I could, go for or anything. It's just, yes, it's true. I relate to maybe the German culture. I have a good opinion on German.
Find some German reality TV. It must exist. I don't watch it, but there must be something.
Oh my God, that is a great idea. Let's see what happens. I'll go look for that. Yeah. Because it's just I'm just like that. It's just the whole being a Madonna fan and then learning English, they just came together in such a way that I could not separate them.
Spanish?
Well, Spanish was just I always liked it, and I like their style because they're fast and because they're and I'm like that, So I feel like it's a language that gives me that opportunity of expressing myself in that particular way. But the second language the first language that I actually studied the most is French, believe it or not. But and I use it for work, it's true, but I don't identify with the language at all. I just can't, and I absolutely hate my pronunciation. And because I cannot get past this, and because I don't need more than what I have, because there's no situations where I would, as far as I can see from this moment, I cannot envision anything that would require further knowledge of French, because the knowledge is there. It's just that I don't speak ever, and I don't ever have a situation where I could speak it. So it's not, unless something happens and I move to Paris or something, which is not something that I'm thinking about, then I don't see how it would be important to me. However, I do have to say that I do have a preference for the French that's spoken in African countries. I identify a lot more with that way of talking than with French in France. And I mean standard French because I don't know French, right? I don't know, I couldn't talk about the differences between Paris and Nice because I don't know anything about that. I could talk about that about American English, obviously, because I've been thinking about it and reading about it and studying it, but definitely not for French. I only know what the standard communication would give me. So I don't have deep knowledge of the language or in any possible way, except for the grammar. So that's really my specialty.
But I think if the passion isn't there, like I learned French only at school, so 5 years, it doesn't get you to a really fluent standard. But and our teacher always brought us hot chocolate at the end of the year. That was very good. but I think if the passion isn't there anymore, like I tried to revive my interest in Turkish, for example. I thought, you spent all this money on lessons and you've got to a decent standard of understanding. The speaking was the problem. And so I went back to it, but it just wasn't there anymore. If you're driven by your interests and your passions in learning something or doing something, and it's gone. It's like a relationship that's over. It's like you can't do anything about that. It's finished now. It doesn't matter how much time you invested in it.
Yeah, I'm definitely like that. I just cannot do it if there's not a very, emotional reason about it. Okay, Kirsty, I think that's it for our first try of a conversation and not a background check on language industry people. So thank you so much. This was really fun. We're going to do other things, I'm sure, networking events, things like that, I guess, because it was so good last time. So I trust you that it's a good idea to do it again. And so the world will be seeing more of Rita and Kirsty eventually.
Absolutely.
Let's hope so. Thank you so much. Have fun. Bye.
I hope you enjoyed this episode of the English with Kirsty podcast. If you have any questions or comments, my email address is kirsty@englishwithkirsty.com, or you can go to www.englishwithkirsty.com/podcast, where you'll find information about the individual episodes.